Welcome everyone to Grape Finance's weekly AMA. My name is Nikki and I'm here with LB as always. Welcome LB.
Hey guys, thanks for listening in. Thanks for all your questions too.
Yeah, thank you so much for just staying a strong community. Also on stage is Sam, although we haven't heard a thing from him yet, so we think his mic is off. But if you hear an extra voice at some point, it's going to be Sam. Sam, welcome. Glad you're here.
Yeah.
All right. The first question is Semaj 68651. That's an interesting name. All right. The saying, so own 13,000 grape notes. I think they mean to say I own 13,000 grape notes, which is a pretty decent number. Do you know if the grape notes will become its own press? Probably its own press. So will the grape notes become its own press?
I mean that's an option, but I'm kind of leaning towards possibly migrating into the soda press because it's probably a better benefit for us to have it as at least partial liquidity rather than loose grape, and as well. As well, it would consolidate all more liquidity into the one actual press rather than having it as a separate press too, which then the benefit of people of all the press holders, essentially all the LPs in the press, is less if it's spread out over multiple presses. Because then there's more liquidity in the one press, then more activity, then there's more share price increase, in other words. So I think, it could, it's possible we can make a grape press if people prefer that, but I think so some sort of migration into soda press might be more beneficial.
So basically, it's not the most optimal thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sam has said he's traveling and there's no network in the train, so that's why he's not responding. It's okay. All right. So grape notes are not going to become their own press, but they might be incorporated into the soda press. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. Unless there's some technical challenge that would make that not possible, which I don't foresee. But it's always hard to foresee things tech related when you're kind of working on things. You know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, unless there's a technical challenge, that's all right. Then we move on to Saint. They say he says, can you elaborate on the vision for the winemaker game to be its own thing? I know we've got some ties with Magic World. Are we creating a vineyard in there? Well, that's definitely an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to Owen pretty often. We'll be working with them on Magic World. We're obviously a faction there, and by winemaking being its own thing, I'm more so talking about focusing a little bit more on GameFi, because right now winemaker is kind of under the Grape umbrella, and it's it's a faction of Grape. It's like it's basically a subsector of Grape, which when we're trying to, if we want to make a game that is widely used or has the most benefit for players and the ecosystem as a whole, well then we kind of need to have it not be some niche subset under the Grape umbrella, and more so being its own thing, as in it's like it's the game. It's a game. It's related to the Grape ecosystem, but it's a game that's standalone that can function on its own, essentially. And so that's what I kind of mean. And we will be working with the Magic ecosystem as well, and there'll be some cool things that we can do there that we're kind of brainstorming now. Right now, obviously, it's pretty early stages with that, and but Owen's a good guy and he's very flexible and very open to kind of throwing ideas here and there and working together in any way that kind of there's a mutual benefit for our community, their community, and the whole ecosystem, the Magic World ecosystem, and whatnot. So there'll definitely be some some good synergies between Grape itself and then Winemaker itself and Magic World as well. So yeah, definitely a lot of things there coming there. Basically, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that Winemaker is its own thing because it is its own game, and it's just tangentially tied to the Grape ecosystem because, well, you can use Grape for it. And with Magic World, well, as I've also spoken to Owen, and he just plans to have everything fully decentralized as much as possible. That which means that if people want it, they're gonna build it, and if people want to collaborate, then they're going to collaborate, and so they want to work with multiple communities, including ours, and make it as cool as possible. So with them, just about everything is possible, I would say.
Yeah.
If they manage to get it done. And
Yeah,
and
it's looking
it
great. He's sending me,
yeah,
little
it is.
screen grabs, and man, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah. And they're basically saying like, hey, if you've got any talent and you wish to help, then please come and help. So,
Yeah.
if you're so inclined, then
Mm-hmm.
and go there. Um, all right. The next question is also saying, hey, sorry, I still sort of have a cold. Do we
Wow.
have any plans to have liquidity on Glacier DAX? And is there advantage to disadvantage to having liquidity spread across DAXs? Well, let me first answer that second question, and then I will leave the first question to you. So there's definitely a disadvantage to having liquidity spread across DEXs as long as there is not a single pool which is really large, because price stability comes from the main pool, so to speak. And especially now that we move into lending and borrowing, having a single pool that is really large is very positive because then liquidations can happen through there. However, once you have a really large pool, there is, of course, no problem having your liquidity spread out over multiple DEXs because it basically just means more trade, and more trade is always good. So that's kind of the answer to the second question, unless you have got anything to add to that, and I'll leave the first question to you as well.
Yeah, I mean that's spot on. It's basically with in relation to liquidity because the price is a function of how much liquidity is in the pool. So until we get something like concentrated liquidity, or something like that, where you can have less liquidity and not have such high price impact, then well, it would be different. But with the kind of the standard Uniswap V2 pools, it's the more liquidity the better. So you don't want to spread yourself too thin. But in saying that, the Glacier tech, the balancer tech, in other words, is offers some unique advantages. In other words, with its kind of weighted pools, where you can have a mix of different tokens in the one LP, multiple tokens in the one LP, or you can have different weights where you have like 80-20, 80 grape, 20 mim, etc., even less, more, and you can have having more grape in the pool in relation to mim. You have less impermanent loss, in other words, because obviously you have more grape that you're holding, in other words. But and as well, there's the other benefit to it is that you can have larger liquidity at a cheaper cost because you have you're using more grape essentially rather than some non-native token like MIM or some other stablecoin or whatnot. So you can build liquidity, cheaper than the 50-50, and bootstrap liquidity cheaper than the 50-50, and you have less impermanent loss. And you can do some other cool things as well, like different index pools. Like you can mix 3-4 tokens into one LP. So we'll definitely have some liquidity there, and obviously, we know Walrus and the team there is obviously a great team. So we'll be working with them closely anyway, and we'll have some liquidity on there. And there'll probably be some way that we can incentivize those LPs as well, which is nice. And so there'll be some good synergies we can work with them on, essentially.
All right. That was a very nice and good answer. Moving on to the last question of Saint before we move on to Neat Grape's essay. Saying, any sneak peeks you can share about upcoming Vinium features? I'm interested to see what the full suite of options will look like on screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially the UI is not going to change much right now. We will do, a full UI update and probably a sort of a redesign almost, because it is a Aave sort of V2 layout right now, and we will switch that up once we go sort of multi-chain in the next year. We'll do a new web design along with that. But in the meantime, it's the LPs that we'll bring onto the site will follow the same standard as they are now. We don't want to add more, add new complexities to the site and whatnot. New buttons or tabs you need to click through to get what you need to do. So it's essentially going to follow the same steps. Like you have the main markets page, you've got LPs there, plus the standard blue chip tokens, and you can click on whatever token you want to borrow or lend, and then in that step you can go through depositing, withdrawing, borrowing, and we'll probably add a leverage slider in there as well. So that the flow will be the same essentially, to reduce any sort of complexity, because it's a pretty well thought out flow. I mean, it's Aave. Aave know what they're doing, obviously, and the flow doesn't need to be changed. Nothing really needs to be added in a way where to add some extra complexity to it right now, because it's essentially what we're doing is we're adding LPs to it, and the LPs function essentially the same as the blue chip tokens that we have, but they have the benefit of you being able to leverage them, and they yield in the background. So there's not many changes that need to be made. But in saying that, a full sort of redesign and new website will come in the new year.
Yeah, and this kind of adds into the question which Neat Grape somewhere states, like, finally, is there a plan for an updated 2023 roadmap for Grape Finance? Because this question is a good one, and your answer is also a good one. But I think it would help to see for people to see what kind of features are planned and what's coming. So we
Yeah,
might
for
want to
sure.
do it a bit now.
We will have a full, a full roadmap for the whole year of 2023, which will encompass, the Vinium side, a grape side, and which will include the winemaker and the game side as well. And obviously, we always throw little things in here and there as well that are not on the roadmap that kind of fit into what as things come along, as new information comes along, we adapt and we kind of add new things or adjust things as they come along. But a general idea of a roadmap will definitely be implemented for viewing for the whole year next year.
Pretty cool. Okay, so now we come to the essay, which starts with "Hey, lemon baracha," and I actually had to Google what a baracha is, but basically it's sort of one of those candies you use to make your throat hurt less. So I'm
Mm.
actually using those right now. I just don't know them by that name. Anyway, "Hey, lemon baracha." You've spoken a little over the last few weeks about adjusting the Grape Finance seniorage model to something more fit for purpose or sustainable. And I was wondering whether you could share where you are up to in your thoughts. I guess I'd love to hear broad ideas, but a few specific questions I'd have would be, here they come. Looking forward now, we've pushed past the last bull market and tomb fork season. What do you see as the use case for grape? Or what problem is it trying to solve? How would X grape, as it exists now, be set apart when other yielding collateral will also exist in Vinium?
Yeah, we can start there. I mean, I guess in the beginning, Twin Forks are kind of, their general purpose is increase liquidity of the peg token very cheaply, because that's what they do best. They're very good at making liquidity for very cheap. And so we've done that with MIM, in other words, trying to make Grape somewhat of a stable coin, an algorithmic stable coin, in other words, for very cheap. Um, and the other purpose of the Tomb Fork is obviously for yield. It's that's why it's very popular. It's a very good yield farm, in other words, with very high returns. But that sort of deal really only works in the bull market. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why, obviously, we're moving less to insane emissions and more to at least provide a service that will have some emissions too, but it will actually provide a service as well. And so now we can tie Grape into that service in a few ways. And so what we're thinking is there's a few ways. Like we can make, obviously, Vinium is a lending borrowing platform, and one of the purposes of it is leverage and access to capital, essentially capital efficiency through, you know, borrowing against your appreciating assets or assets that you don't want to sell, or yielding assets. So Grape can fill that void almost, where we can make, if we turn it into a proper stablecoin that is trustworthy, then we can make it essentially like a CDP model, like MIM, in other words, where we have Grape be very low interest or no interest for borrowing. That would need to be, obviously, we need to make some adjustments to Grape and how it would function if we did that. But one of the benefits of that is that we already have liquidity in Grape. This is kind of a good point about Tomb Forks, is that they already have liquidity. So that's a good bonus that we have right now, or a good like a positive about Grape, is that we have liquidity that we can do something with. And there's a few things I'm thinking with that. So one is obviously a CDP model, like a Grape stablecoin that can be a hard peg. It can be a softer peg, but if we did a softer peg, then it would be the ability to use it as a leverage token to borrow and then leverage, sell, buy whatever thing that you want to leverage, and then, borrow against that, and, continue around. Is the ability to do that with a softer peg is less so, because there's no collateral backing it. And then it makes it difficult to maintain the peg with that. But there are some cool things with, algorithmic stablecoins as well. Like I mentioned last week, I'm pretty sure, about Beanstalk being a pretty decent model for an algorithmic stablecoin that is maintained around the peg. Like I think they're 96 cents now, but they have gone there and they've come back before, and they have a very good mechanism for that, and they're fully algorithmic, but you can look at their inflation model and you can see that it's not something ridiculous. Like it's not 1% a day. It's I think I checked recently. It was like 1% a year. So that's the idea. There is not the the tomb fork model, which is we don't actually want to be a peg as a tomb fork. You want to be above peg, like well above peg, so that you can get yield. In other words, that was that's the bull market version of a tomb fork is essentially a yield farm. But with something that's supposed to be an actual usable stable coin, you don't really want it to be high above peg because you want to use it as a stable coin. You're going to know that's going to return back to peg, and so that's you're capturing that loss. In other words, which you can see kind of now with LUSD. They went above peg. I mean, they're hard pegged, but they are decentralized, and when there is demand, they can go above peg. Like they went to 105 when they launched their chicken bonds because the demand was very high. And the problem there is that now they're 102, so there's already a 3% difference there, actually a little bit more. But you get the idea. The idea is that if you're a stable coin, you kind of want to maintain you want to actually maintain on the peg to actually be usable as a proper stablecoin.
Yeah, so what you're basically saying is, on the one hand, you want to be very close towards PAG, and what you're seeing as possible solutions are having a more collateralized version. So my personal experience with that would be, I think it was Hector DAO or something. They allowed you to borrow Lambda against their token, and then you could use that as a leverage or whatever. And you're also mentioning, of course, Beanstalk, which is just an algorithmic stablecoin only printing very slowly. And as I understand it, you want to be somewhere in between those two, or you want to find a niche between those two functionalities so that people can actually borrow Grape as a means to leverage. Is that kind of what you were saying? Because
Yeah,
I'm trying.
that's yeah. I mean, it's that's definitely an option where I see we can go that would tie in very nicely with Vinium, where we are a stable coin that is used for leverage, and maintain more of a harder peg that we're not designed to be 1.2 peg. In other words, we're designed to be one. Maybe we fluctuate around 1 or 2% around, but we're not used. The idea is not to be a yield farm tomb fork. In other words, it's designed to be a stable coin that you can leverage for low interest, very low interest, lower than borrowing, USDC or whatnot from a money market, which is the benefit there. In other words, um,
Yeah, absolutely.
we
And
have
and,
yeah.
and since you're mentioning Beanstalk, do you see a possible future where Grape is still just as right now being printed as long as it is above pack, but just really really slowly? Is this a possible future you're envisioning, or are you truly thinking of shutting down the winery? What's the idea
I
there?
mean, I would like to keep the winery. I think it's a nice little feature to have the ability to share seigniorage.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that's a
I
really.
do
I think
agree there.
I like that idea. It's a really nice idea, and I do like the beanstalk model. Um, so if there's a way it can work like that, there would obviously need to be some adjustments, but
Mm.
there's benefit to that model. There's drawbacks too. Obviously, everything is a a spectrum of a benefit and drawback. There's a there's obviously a spectrum between any sort of model you choose. Um, but that's like essentially one option is tying it in like that. We can also do more of a synthetics model where, we use Grape as the backing for a synthetic token, which then we can have multiple different synthetic tokens on that, and we can make, even derivatives markets on top of those synthetics. So, I mean, that's another option that I have been thinking about and kind of modeling, and there's merit to that model too. It's a very flexible model. It's not as capital efficient, but there's benefits too, where, as I mentioned, it's more flexible. We can actually build quite a few things on top of that, and it's I mean, synthetics is SUSD is held peg very well, even though it's only backed by the SNX token. But it's backed at a high ratio, in other words. So it essentially would be a similar model, like a CDP almost, but it would be a synthetics model. So there's another option that I've also been throwing around. And at the same time, we could also move past that and go through just focusing on the liquidity that we have and utilizing that liquidity with Grape as its price not really mattering, but still keeping the seniorage as well, because why not? That's a nice bonus to have. If the demand is very high, then we can print more of it and share the seniorage, but we can still utilize the liquidity in a way for, in a derivatives market or whatnot that we can build on top of that liquidity, but not have to, like the price of the token doesn't really matter in that regard. So
So basically what you're saying is you have so many ideas floating around right now, which could all work in and of themselves, or they could even a combination, it could be working. So you basically just still and as when it comes to this, you're sort of in the brainstorming phase, as I get it. Is that correct, or have you? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
I mean, it's where we're going next. Obviously, we have Vinium, and I want to tie in everything with that.
mhm.
And I'm looking at what we have right now and how we can utilize that for the best advantage. And as I mentioned, we have liquidity that we can utilize. We can utilize to bootstrap, some sort of stablecoin model, which can be, through CDPs, synthetics, or keep it algorithmic and utilize that within Vinium, or we can bypass that and keep it as just utilize liquidity for a derivatives market that we built on top of it, which would also be something very cool, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's there's a load of options, and I think by having this talk, we've answered a couple of the other questions as well. Because one of them is, given current problems with the seniorage model, do you think there are adjustments that can be made to the algorithm to continue offering a soft pack with prints above and contractions below, or do we need to move away from that model? Well, we're obviously, if we're going to continue that, we're probably going to do it on a lower pace, but not sure yet. But it would be nice to continue it. I personally think that it's really nice to share into the seniorage model that way, and I wouldn't mind a lower pace. It's
Yeah, I like it. It's a nice. It is a nice benefit for shareholders of the system. You share
yeah,
in the seniorage in the growth of the system. It's a really nice benefit to have it. And even if we move to some CDP model, we could still have the same sort of mechanism where you share in seniorage. In other words, like MIM. In other words, does have
yeah.
sharing of if you stake spell, you do get MIM.
You mentioned the CBT model. Is that collateralized borrowing token or something? What
Oh,
was
it's
that?
no, it's CDP. So like
That's it.
collateralized debt position,
Oh,
which is
okay.
essentially is what MIM is. That sort of model.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I'm very bad with acronyms, so I'm always asking.
No. It's yeah.
Um,
I should actually mention that. Yeah.
well, it's okay. You mentioned it now.
Yeah.
All right. How are the burns going, and can we accelerate the fire? Is also a question. How are the burns going is something I'll let you answer, but can we accelerate the fire as well? But I also would like to say it doesn't necessarily need to be burned. Like as long as people just hold, that would be nice as well,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Don't necessarily, it doesn't need to be burned. Just hold and have faith in it instead of immediately selling. That would be nice.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
It,
yeah,
it yeah. No, I agree. It's obviously doesn't impact the price. Like the burns don't directly impact the price. It's more of a psychology thing almost. That you're burning. People see the burning. It's kind of like we know the supply is decreasing, and therefore there's less supply that can be sold. In other words,
yeah.
so I used some of the. Well, actually, I used some of it for the Grape Walrus nodes that we had. I still haven't split. Uh, Actually, for the last few weeks, I haven't split. I don't think any of the X Grape and LP that we've got from Raisin. So that's why we
Mm.
haven't actually burnt anything, because I've just kept it as LP um, to keep liquidity. In other words, because we do actually need more protocol liquidity, um, especially coming to the end of the emissions now. And liquidity has kind of dropped, so we've wanted to hold it ourselves, so that as I mentioned, emissions are ending. We want to hold it, and um, yeah. So I haven't actually split any recently, but there is some to be split and burnt. But there's also benefit to keeping it as liquidity right now. So that's why I haven't done that.
All right, that's clear. I was wondering because this kind of is tied into all of this. A lot of the selling came from people who held nodes. Like, do you, in retrospect, feel that we shouldn't have done the nodes, or are we still really happy with them? Or, I mean, the nodes changed over time, and I think that the newer models are a lot better. But
Hmm.
were the old models a mistake, or were they good? What do you think
Well, I
if you're looking
think
back at them?
I think for the time they were good. Obviously, not everything works forever. I don't think there's anything that just works forever. Things need to be adjusted, and the models need to be changed, especially as the market itself changes.
Mhm.
So obviously, nodes right now is not the best system because, well, there's not enough demand even in the market itself for that sort of inflation. Uh, Even though it's not inflation, but it's technically it's not newly minted, but it's emitted daily at least, to kind of meet that to meet that. There's not enough demand to meet that essentially right now. So, and we also had the press model that came after it, which I do think is a better model. But that's a model that came after it, so like we didn't have that model at that time. So I mean that's kind of how it is with software in general, is that things kind of they work for a period of time, they get out of date, they kind of get replaced, newer models come in that are better, the market changes as well, which is I mean all markets change, different needs are required, and we adapt to kind of meet those needs and meet those demands, in other words. So
Yeah,
I
so it was good for the moment, but in the end, the market just turned. That's
yeah.
very true. All right, moving on. There's the roadmap question. Oh, there's also what would the upsides and downsides be of hard or partially collateralized pack? Well, I kind of think we've been over this. So moving on to very excited to hear your thoughts about what to keep the same and what to change as we head on forward into the next year. Sorry about the novella. Big love for Grape as always, and thank you as always for everything you do and the weekly updates. I kind of think we've discussed this quite well. So the thoughts are quite clear. Then we move on. I think we're going to the AMA live chat. Need Vintage might have copied his thing there somewhere. Yeah, he did. He did. Okay, cool. Then, all right. Wapo is correcting me, but we'll get to that at some point. Where's the start? I'm looking. Oh, starting here. Where's Steve? My Steve senses are tingling. Jankel says, you better come up with something exciting to share after that. I have got something to share announcement. All right, so I made an announcement where it's just, I have to link to the AMA, and the link kind of speaks for itself. So I was thinking, well, what do I actually like? I can type a whole lot of story, but I can just put the link and like I've got something to share. Here's the link. But yeah, I can share stuff like, but it's not really related to Grape. It would be related to me or other protocols or whatever. So I don't want to take Grape stage by doing that kind of thing. Like, but my life's going well. I've just bought a house on wheels that I'm gonna retrofit and
Nice.
to make really cool and
Nice.
that means it's hopefully by May, my girlfriend and I are going to be actual nomads, living in a truck that is a house. So those
Yeah,
kind of
nice.
things are really
Yeah.
cool. And as people know, I'm working with Chilio a lot. With the backdrop of Celestio at the moment, but he's got some really great things that he wants to develop. Also, he's also working with you, LB. I think he's did that swap as a code swap. So good things are going to come from that as well. And yeah, just I have got things to share. They just don't relate to Grape necessarily. So I think I'll just leave it for that. All right. Wapo, you gonna get up on stage? Friendly Grape God. He's got nothing to say. He says, right. Lucha Bigelow. Who's that? All right.
And
What?
he does Bigelow.
Who's that? Do you know? I don't know. But
It's the film. That film, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, since Eric has left, thanks God or me. Well, yeah, you did have something to do with that. I've noticed a lacking in the marketing department. Yeah. Is this by design given market or are there plans to improve marketing? That's a really good question. Yeah, as Eric was our marketeer, right? So
He
and of course
was,
we are,
but at the same time, for a period, for a while before he even left, he wasn't actually doing marketing for us. Um,
yeah.
Havoc was main marketer for probably like 2 months before anyway, and Havoc still runs things here and there, but at the same time, we've kind of not focused too heavily on the marketing towards the back end of this year, while while the market is basically cheating itself, but also while we're kind of tying up some loose ends, like some of these nodes that we just did this week, but also finalizing Vinium, getting it as a product ready for market essentially, and cross chain expansion where we can really blast in kind of one go, so that we can save resources rather than trying to keep hype going for this whole time would cost a little bit of money that in a bear market, we need to save those resources and plan our marketing approach in a way that is most beneficial, most cost effective, in other words. So we haven't done too much marketing in recent terms. We've done a few AMAs here and there. We're going to do an AMA with Swapsicle soon. With their, I think tomorrow, the day after. You're going to do that.
I thought it was Tuesday. Oh wait, let me
Yeah.
look.
20th.
Got it in my calendar because I'm
I
actually
don't know,
going to be there. Yeah,
I mean, for me,
it's
it's the
Tuesday.
19th now. So I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
that's the problem. Yeah.
It's Tuesday at wait, it's 2100 for me, so that would be UTC 2000 on the sports school stage, and I'll be speaking at least. I don't know who else, but it's probably going to be fun, because those are fun guys and nice guys as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was interrupting.
No, so I mean that's it essentially. We haven't, essentially bear market. We need to save resources and actually build a decent product first, and then build out some good marketing campaign while we also launch cross chain. So we have been talking, in the background to BDs from different chains to get build the network and build connections on these chains, so that when we actually launch, we're not just launching as some no-name guy on some chain that like no one cares about us. At least we have uh, some sort of actual bang when we launch as a full service, in other words. So that's what we're trying to do.
All right. I think that's, yeah, great. By the way, I've also just researched who Juice Bigelow is, and he's apparently some kind of sex worker, I think. This was because, in chat, I mentioned that
I'm pretty sure it's an
I
Adam
was,
Sandler film.
yeah, that I had helped somewhere, and then, well, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, Tim's, there's this thing like, hey guys, quick question. What would be the use case for as vintage was wine emission ends? And then from that, I will go to the problem with tomb forks, a vestigial organ that is the T-warp. So, but first, just a quick question. What would be the use case for as vintage once wine emission ends?
Well, I mean, as vintage, I mean, you can put it in the Solera, obviously, that doesn't stop.
Hmm.
But, as vintage is an extra mechanism to earn more vintage in the game. There's always, that's like the use case doesn't change. The wine emissions for it were just kind of like a bonus thing. That was, not its own, not its like, main thing, in other words. That's also why we have the Solera. So it's kind of almost replacing it, or having it without any emissions, which is nice. That's what I do like the presses for that.
Hmm.
So you have as vintage, it's a way that you can acquire a lot more vintage, especially the longer you're in there. It's kind of like X Grape, in that you always get more underlying token as you're staked in the cellar, in other words.
Right. And that, right, and then we move on to I I know the problem with tomb forks. This is Wapo. It says I know the problem with tomb forks. The T-warp. A T-warp is an archaic vestigial organ of the basis cache fork anatomy that is arbitrary and easily thrown around. The Fed does not print money willy-nilly until an arbitrary T-warp is hit. The mechanism which decides if print or contraction is appropriate needs to be made more sophisticated and realistic. I'm sorry. I want to do something really innovative, rework the concept of T-warp. Yeah, I do agree on that. Actually, I've thought on that for a bit, and had some ideas on it, some concepts on it, but I think also an issue is the renounced contracts, is it not?
Well, we are pretty inflexible with Grape token, like the actual token of Grape itself. So that's kind of why we would need to migrate anyway. But the inflation is just too high. Like you're not going. It's just not. You can't print 1% a day forever. That's just. It's not going to work.
No. But that's what he says. Like the mechanism which decides if print or contraction is appropriate needs to be made more sophisticated. So kind of the TWAP is just too basic a model and
It's
need to
very
have
simple. Yeah, it's
different
very.
indicators to see whether we should print or not. And
Yeah, definitely.
I do agree on that. It does need some more sophistication. And yeah, well, the Fed is obviously printing whether inflation or not is high or low, or at least that's why they're saying they're printing. Um, I personally feel that the central banks are waging a war between themselves, but um, it's that's their reasoning, and we might just want to have a less simple reasoning ourselves as well. It's just, you know, there are many ways to go for that, many ways to think of something like that, and uh, I would say, join the club and thinking of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, Wapo is saying that I am wrong about that it doesn't need to be burned. Like grape doesn't need to be burned because you aren't being productive ignoring it. The way to burn is to split liquidity and get it sold to the ground, I guess, and then at dirt cheap buyback to supply, burn it and start fresh into new utility. Preserve capital, not hold and slow bleed. If you aren't being proactive, you'll have no powder by the time the real utility is up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so basically, if I understand correctly, this is saying I either sell it or burn it. And
Mm-hmm.
then once it is low and there's also low liquidity, you can just buy back cheap and then, make it soar again. I hope I understand it right.
No, exactly. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing with, we're trying to wrap up some of the things like the nodes. I didn't want liquidity in that pair. I want kind of less liquidity or liquidity that we own that we can kind of at least control and split ourselves. That is not at the whims of someone else. In other words, and uh, that's why we moved. We got rid of that. We got rid of the Great Walrus nodes. In other words, because that liquidity doesn't help us at this time, and the way the easiest way for us to migrate is for us to have it done very cheaply. In other words, and we can do that when everybody that wants to exit is gone, and we own what we own a majority, or at least we have enough funds to purchase up the majority, which is good because we have, we've been holding good stable coins for a large portion of this time. We're not wrapped up in illiquid investments that we can't sell right now. So, we have capital that we can use, to migrate very nicely.
Right. So that's basically saying, hey, we're now that we're sort of at the bottom, or at least close to the bottom, we can support our tokens again. Once we have a clear vision of how we want
Mm-hmm.
to um, make the new situation. So that's basically saying that people, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, but that sounds like you're saying, hey, guys, we're not going to abandon you, or just, we're finding our way, and
Well,
then
no, yeah, yeah.
once we have our way, we're going to make sure that the people are still there. are definitely going to be all right, basically, or at least we're going to try and support that. I mean, we cannot control everything, but
Yeah, exactly.
right,
But it's not
yeah,
like we can. We can't afford to pay like $1 million. You know what I mean? We don't have $1 million to spend to buy up everything. In other words, so we need to
yeah,
have it in a way where. And we're not going to abandon anything. I mean, we're deep in a bear. We would have kind of done that by now. I mean, I you know what I mean. So we've built out a whole system that we're going to utilize to move grape towards. And as we touched on today, there's quite a few options that we can have for grape's future, which I think I'm pretty excited that there's of the options that we have. Like I've been having a good time, kind of researching different ways we can do it and kind of putting it to paper on like how we can do that. And as with all these things, there's positives and negatives to each method that we can use. And what what we want really is to be able to afford to do it. And it's kind of where we are right now, especially considering that we've, as I mentioned, have the stable coins to be able to do that. Like we're not actually locked in investments that we can't sell
yeah.
that
With
are
the
also down
treasury,
like
we're locked in
50%.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that kind of.
Yeah. I mean, if we invested, in certain things in 6 months ago, we would be in a much worse position as a treasury.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not all that bad. It's
Yeah.
actually quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of do like that, and I think it kind of feels like this is a pivotal time, not necessarily right now or today or this week, but just this period of time that we are
Hmm.
in right now, as we have approached our we are approaching or have reached our lowest of lows, and right now we have so many ideas and so many ways to go that it simply just needs a direction, or we need a direction for, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to fix it, and then we'll just take off again.
Hmm.
That's how I feel it's going to go. But
No, definitely. That's the idea, right? We need to, through the bear market, everybody gets hammered and hit hard, and we need to and in that point in time, it's not like we need to rush to like keep afloat. You know what I mean? We need to. That's not the time to do that. We need to uh think, uh conserve resources, and plan to
yeah,
utilize what we have in the best way to be able to modify what we have and actually come out stronger. In other words.
yeah. And Wapo is considering that we are going to be pirates. Like no one is
Well,
saying
I mean, we're
abandon.
in crypto, man. We're in
Yeah, 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 exactly.
decentralized finance. It's the
We are like.
pirates of finance.
Yeah, yeah, LB gets it. Yeah. Well, I'm still gonna read it though. Think of a pirate ship. We have voyaged long and mighty, but now we are a rotting foundation and barnacles. We can either continue the journey and sink like Captain Ahab, or we can shore up, pull the ship apart for usable material, build a new ship, albeit smaller but more safe and efficient, and continue the journey to Treasure Island. Some crew will join, others will walk the plank. There is value in Grape still as of now, and we have community or a crew that is the value we must preserve. Yeah, I do agree on that. Like, hey, that's what I also meant with this is a pivotal time. Like, okay, we are at our low, and what are we going to do now? What's going to be our direction? And that could be envisioned as a smaller ship, as it were. So yeah, Yar, I would say. Let's move on. The pirate ship. Oh, by the way, this is interesting. It has to do sort of like with being in crypto, or doing things in a different way, or the pirate way. since I'm planning to become a nomad, so to speak, and have no place of residence, I was um, talking with another guy who's already living that life with
Mm.
his wife and daughter, and the funny thing is that he said, "Well, I did a limited what's that limited liability company in the US because if I register that in the US, I can do it online, and you don't need a place of residence for the company because
Mm.
the European system is really annoying by that. If you don't have a place of residence, you cannot register a company." So he said, "Well, that just cost me $350 a year, and whenever anyone wants to pay me, they can do it there.
Mm.
And then I pay taxes in the place where I live, which is nowhere." Oh my, that is awesome! Like,
Actually, so
yeah,
what? So he doesn't pay taxes then?
no, because
Yeah.
you don't have a place of residence, and since you don't have a place of residence, you don't have you're not obliged to pay taxes anywhere. I mean, obviously, when you buy something, you pay BTV. I don't know what
Yeah.
that is, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like the extra tax for stuff that you
You pay
buy and
tax on
sell. But
everything, yeah.
yeah,
Which is the
that's it.
scam, isn't it?
It
You pay
kind of is.
tax
Although
on
I do like
everything.
road and
I
stuff.
mean, well, you pay tax on everything
Yeah,
using money that you've already been taxed on. Like,
yeah,
income.
that is
You've got income.
very
You pay tax on the income, and then you have to
yeah,
buy things to live that you also pay
yeah,
tax on, but you've already paid tax on that money.
yeah. It's
It's a
true.
scam.
It's very much, and even the money itself is a scam. Like I was considering like fiat money, right? But it's fiat in something. But what is it fiat in?
Mm,
It's basically fiat in the productive capabilities of the people who are in a certain state, or well, when it comes to the euro, a certain union of states.
mm,
Um, so it's basically saying, hey, we're borrowing money on the collateral of people's productivity.
mm.
So uh, we're the collateral. And that is so odd. Like, it took a while. Um, let's see. Okay, there is this question: what will happen to the when wine emissions end? And I don't want to skip that because that is endless rainbows is asking that question. I think the vineyard is not continuing, right? That's our farm, so it's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
stop.
Well, it just ends. I mean, you can withdraw at any time post then.
Yeah.
That I mean, they will stay open for withdrawals, and you can deposit obviously, but you won't earn anything. We'll add some notice. You know, there'll be announcements and all that sort of stuff around that time to let you know what to do
All right,
there. But basically, you just withdraw.
all right. Christmas coming next week, and my stockings are looking like when auction. Auction of what? Um,
Oh yeah,
same.
we'll do an auction. We'll at least test run an auction of the corkers this week for this
Oh
coming
yeah,
week.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you promised last time. Like it's gonna be before Christmas. Still there.
Hmm.
All right. Same as company in the Trust Ecuador owning a company in Singapore that lends you money. Yeah. Bullion, bullion for the win. Yeah, definitely. If the US Fed is damn near insolvent, the US Fed is damn near insolvent if you weigh the balance sheets, debt and liabilities versus equity. Yeah, the thing is, it's not just the Fed. All of the central banks all across the world. So the Bank of England, the Canadian Central Bank, the European Central Bank, the Australian one, all of them are at this very moment sort of like insolvent, and they all deal with it in different ways. But I don't think that the populace is going to be the happiest out of that equation. And Wapo says, I'm aware of the esoteric agenda and they keep preaching to the choir. Yeah. Yeah, me too. And this is a thing, though, and I think it's difficult to speak about this kind of thing because a lot of people will consider that tinfoil hat kind of stuff. Like but the thing is, it's very interesting to look into what is actually happening and what has been happening for the last 100 years or so, what the central banks have been doing, who they are,
Mhm.
and what the relationship is between central banks and governments. For example, the simple fact that two American presidents have tried to move away from the central banks, and both of them have been assassinated. It's this kind
Yeah.
of thing makes it so that once you look at it long and hard, it really is a very dark picture,
Mhm.
and once you look at it that way, and you see those aspects where society seems to be failing, it might not just not be failing; it might be intentional. And that's where I want to leave it because you know. Esotericism and spirituality might come into it if you look at it long and hard, but it's and I do agree on that, but it's not for everyone. Um,
Yeah. You can
this
read
is
the Creature from Jekyll Island. Have a read.
yeah,
It's a
and
funny
then
book.
yeah, the I'm sorry, Jekyll Island, right? The
Yeah, the Creature from Jekyll Island.
yeah, I've got that book.
That book.
I've read the first few chapters so far, but I'm gonna get back to it at some point. It's really interesting, and yeah, and what also says the Federal Reserve isn't even American. It's a branch of the IMF that was made to pay back King George, who funded both sides of the revolution. Wow. I didn't even know that, but maybe if I'd read the whole book of the Creature of Jekyll Island, I would have known. Uh, but yeah, so it's and crypto is definitely a way out of that. Like it is a way out of the central bank scamming us. But at the same time, if you realize that two presidents who've tried to get us out of that, or at least the U.S. out of that, have been assassinated, then and you see a lot of crypto billionaires being targeted as well. It's kind of a dangerous thing as well. But
Oh,
well,
you're
it's
threatening their livelihood, their power and control and
yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
livelihood, and it's
You're
business.
you're threatening the leaders of the world. Yeah. Even though we don't want them to be the leaders of the world, but they are. Okay. Um, I think we're going to leave that as is. Did you want to say anything still about the wine emissions in the vineyard, or are we gonna just um, leave
Oh,
that as is?
what about them? Was there another question on them?
Yeah, there was a question on that. It's Endless Rainbow says, what will happen to the vineyard when wine emissions end?
Oh, we didn't answer that. I just mentioned I mean, it will stay open, but it won't be emitting any wine. It's hard coded in the contract. To like, there's nothing we can add to the contract or adjust or anything to mint more tokens or anything like that. So potentially the vineyard will close. You'll still be able to withdraw your LPs or tokens and claim your rewards too. But no new wine will be emitted from that date as well, which is a good thing for wine. And then they'll obviously the presses will still be open for LPs at that time, and depending on how we go with you know collaborations with Glacier, if we can get some sort of incentives there, or with some other dexes, we can get incentives elsewhere, but nothing set in stone right now.
All right. Oh, okay. Then I think we're gonna close it. Wait. Hey, LB. Sorry. Neat Grape saying, hey, LB, kind of follow up on the vineyard question. What rewards and LP incentives are likely to exist after the vineyard closes? Obviously, inflationary wine emissions and we can bribe Glacier for some incentives. Will money, will money from a revenue be used? I take it revenue from Vinium then.
Well, we can do that. I mean, we have reserves in the treasury. We don't have any things lined up right now for other incentives, because it also does depend on what we will do with Grape and its liquidity going forward. So, and it will depend as well on how Glacier is laid out, whether we can bribe or not from the beginning. I know on solidly dexes have very good bribe systems from the beginning. Balancer dexes, not all the time. They usually have to get into the core pools or into the main pools for that. But that's something we can work with, and we have good relations with other decks as well that we can work on getting incentives for as well in the meantime. So there'll be, and plus the presses are always open.
All right. Then I think we've come to the end of this AMA, and I'd like to thank everyone for their questions and for their participation. And it's always nice talking with the community this way. Yeah, thank you too. I'm seeing some thanks coming up. So we'll be here next week again, or is it Christmas then? I think we need to decide what we want to do with Christmas.
I think it is Christmas.
I don't know what Kodosh Adonai Tsebaoth means, but I'm glad for those wishes because it seems very positive.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what was it. So, but what are we going to have an AMA next week during Christmas, or what are we going to do?
Oh, I mean, maybe a different day. Maybe a different day.
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, we'll talk and we'll organize something.
Yeah. And by then, X Grape is going to be collateral, or what? Right?
Yeah, we'll do this week. We'll, as I mentioned, the auction will launch, and X-Ray should go this week as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the curve LP too.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That too. Okay. The curve LP too. Yeah, definitely. All right. Wapo says Christmas. Shalom. Well,
Yes.
yeah. Any kind of holiday will work.
Happy
I
Hanukkah.
personally, I personally celebrate midwinter because I'm a pagan. But most people
Midwinter.
call it Christmas. But it doesn't matter. Happy holidays. Have a lot
Okay.
of fun, and we'll see you guys soon. A lot of love, and until next time. Bye bye.
Thanks everyone for listening.